Picture this. You're in a corporate Zoom meeting, it's April 2020, the world is on lockdown. And while reviewing quarterly reports from your home office, you see a face on screen that you swear you've seen on a missing person poster from 25 years ago. Not just any face, the face of a child who vanished without a trace on June 12, 1995, whose faded photo you've seen hundreds of times on milk cartons, post office walls, and grocery store bulletin boards across America. This is the true story of Marcus Henderson and his employee Daniel Torres, though that wasn't the name he was born with. What investigators uncovered was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. For exactly 25 years, a family mourned their missing son while he lived just 526 miles away, under a completely fabricated identity. The supposed safety of working from home, that new normal meant to protect us from the invisible virus lurking outside, became the setting where one of the most disturbing missing children cases in U.S. history finally broke wide open. A Zoom call with meeting ID 782-4519-6023, scheduled for 10 Mao a.m. Eastern on April 14, 2020, would forever change two families' lives and expose a web of lies spun over a quarter century. What Marcus Henderson saw on his screen that Tuesday wasn't just an employee discussing sales projections. It was the ghost of a child the world had given up for dead, alive, talking about quarterly metrics, completely unaware that his carefully constructed life was about to come crashing down. Here's where it gets strange. The technology that isolated us during the pandemic became the key to solving a 25-year-old cold case. Christopher Michael Brennan was exactly 9 years and 4 months old when he went missing. He wasn't just another statistic. He was a freckle-faced kid who wanted to be an astronaut, collected baseball cards religiously, and asked his mother Sarah for just one more chapter of The Hobbit every single night before bed. On June 12, 1995, Christopher wore his favorite blue and white striped Gap Kids t-shirt, the one his grandmother Martha had given him for his last birthday, faded Levi's shorts with holes in both knees from countless hours at the playground, and red Nike Air Max sneakers that lit up when he ran. The Brennans weren't wealthy, but they weren't poor either. Michael Brennan pulled double shifts as an electrician at the General Motors plant in Lansing, Michigan. Sarah taught second grade at Willow Creek Elementary, the same school where Christopher was finishing fourth grade. They'd lost their younger daughter Emily to leukemia 3 years earlier. Christopher was their only surviving child, their reason to get up each morning, the glue holding together a marriage fractured by grief. The last message Christopher left was a note scrawled in green crayon on the refrigerator. "Mom, going to Tommy's after school. Promise I'll be back for dinner. Love you." Tommy Peterson, his best friend since kindergarten, would later confirm Christopher never made it to his house that day. The last photo taken of Christopher was during morning recess at 10:47 a.m., accidentally captured in the background of a chess club group photo. You can see him grinning while playing with his red Duncan yo-yo, the same one they'd find abandoned 72 hours later in an alley 3 blocks from school. Christopher had a distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark on his left cheek and a small scar above his right eyebrow from when he'd crashed his blue Huffy bike at age 7. He was missing his lower front tooth, normal for his age, and had a nervous habit of biting his nails when anxious. Teachers described him as brilliant but shy, a kid who'd rather read during recess than play football with the other boys. The night before he vanished, Christopher ate his favorite meal, Kraft mac and cheese with chicken nuggets. Sarah would forever remember how unusually affectionate her son had been that evening, hugging her 3 times before bed and saying, "You're the best mom in the world." Michael got home late from work but managed to say goodnight to his son, who made him promise they'd go fishing at Lake Huron that weekend. "You got it, champ," were the last words Michael would ever say to his son. The Brennans lived in a modest 2-story house at 1847 Maple Street, with a front yard where Christopher had planted sunflowers the previous summer. His room, painted sky blue with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, would remain untouched for the next 25 years, a shrine frozen in time. His Power Rangers backpack, his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures, his collection of 237 baseball cards meticulously organized in binders, all waiting for a boy who would never come home. But here's the thing about missing children cases in the pre-internet era. Without Amber Alerts, without social media, without instant nationwide communication, a child could simply vanish. And that's exactly what happened to Christopher Brennan. June 12, 1995, dawned at 78 degrees Fahrenheit in Lansing, Michigan. At 6:23 a.m., Christopher's Mickey Mouse alarm clock rang like it did every school day. Sarah Brennan entered his room at 6:31 a.m. to make sure he was awake. Christopher got up at 6:35 a.m., showered for exactly 7 minutes, and came down for breakfast at 6:52 a.m. He ate a bowl of Lucky Charms with 2% milk and a glass of Tropicana orange juice. At 7:18 a.m., Michael Brennan said goodbye to his family. He kissed Sarah on the cheek and ruffled Christopher's hair. "Be good, champ," he said while grabbing his blue Coleman lunchbox. Christopher replied, "I'm always good, Dad." Michael left the house at 7:21 a.m., not knowing it was the last time he'd see his son in their home. At 7:45 a.m., Christopher and his mother left the house. The air smelled of diesel from school bus number 47 passing their street, mixed with the sweet scent of lilacs from Mrs. Henderson's garden next door. You could hear the metallic sound of Billy Matthews' green Schwinn bike as the 14-year-old paperboy made his rounds. Sarah drove her beige 1993 Honda Civic the 3 miles to Willow Creek Elementary, arriving at 7:54 a.m. At 7:56 a.m., Christopher got out of the car at the main entrance. Sarah noticed her son had forgotten his science project, a solar system diorama made with painted styrofoam balls. "Don't worry, honey, I'll bring it at recess," she promised. Christopher smiled, showing the gap from his missing tooth, and ran toward the building. It was the last time Sarah would see her son as Christopher Brennan. Classes proceeded normally. Mrs. Patricia Williams, his fourth-grade teacher, reported that Christopher participated in math class at 8:45 a.m., correctly answering that 7 times 8 equals 56. During the 10:30 a.m. recess, he played marbles with Tommy Peterson and Jeremy Clark near the rusty swings in the back playground. He ate lunch at 12:15 p.m. in the cafeteria, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich his mother had made, a Granny Smith apple, and a grape high C juice box. The dismissal bell rang at 2:47 p.m. Christopher was last seen on the school's analog security camera at 2:51 p.m., walking alone toward the building's east exit. The grainy VHS tape would later show a blurry figure approaching him at 2:52 p.m. At 2:53 p.m., both figures disappear from the single functioning camera's field of view. Tommy Peterson waited for Christopher at his house from 3:05 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. When he didn't show, Tommy assumed plans had changed. He didn't call the Brennans because his family couldn't afford a landline. This 40-minute delay would prove crucial. At 3:15 p.m., a dark blue Chevrolet Astro van with partially visible plates, MI-47X, was spotted by 67-year-old Margaret Cooper, illegally parked at the corner of Oak Street and 3rd Avenue, just 2 blocks from school. She'd specifically remember the driver, a man approximately 35-40 years old, wearing a red baseball cap, seemed to be waiting for someone. He kept looking toward the school, she'd later testify. At 4:30 p.m., Sarah Brennan started to worry. Christopher always got home before 4 p.m. She called the Petersons from the school phone. Tommy's mother informed her Christopher had never arrived. Panic set in at 4:37 p.m. when Sarah called Michael at work. "Something's wrong," were her first words. At 5:15 p.m., after driving around the neighborhood searching for Christopher, the Brennans called 911. Officer Dennis Mitchell arrived at their house at 5:43 p.m. Because Christopher was only 9, they immediately activated an alert. But in 1995, this meant phone calls to local stations and faxes to neighboring departments. No Amber Alert system, no instant nationwide database. At 6:22 p.m., Christopher's red Duncan yo-yo was found by a homeless man named Carl Red Thompson in the alley behind Murphy's liquor store. He wouldn't report it until 3 days later when he saw the missing flyers and recognized the toy described. At 7 p.m., as the sun began setting, painting the sky burnt orange, 47 volunteers were already searching within a 2-mile radius of the school. Police dogs arrived at 8:14 p.m., but unexpected rain starting at 8:47 p.m. would wash away any useful scent trail. The exact moment Christopher trusted the wrong person was inadvertently captured in the field journal of amateur birdwatcher Harold Finch, who at 2:54 p.m. on June 12th wrote, Observing Northern Cardinal when boy with Power Rangers backpack voluntarily gets into blue van at Oak and 3rd. Driver gave him something. Looked like candy or toy. 2:55 p.m. Van heads east. Finch wouldn't connect this observation to the disappearance until a week later when he finally read the backlogged newspaper. By then, the van and its occupants had vanished without a trace, beginning 25 years of agonizing silence. What happened next defies explanation, even by today's standards. The first 48 hours after Christopher Brennan vanished exposed the brutal limitations of 1995 law enforcement. The Lansing Police Department, led by Chief Robert Lawson, had just 127 officers for a population of 119,000. No Amber Alerts existed yet. They wouldn't launch until 1996. No instant national databases, and interagency coordination relied on fax machines that jammed constantly with paper. Lead Detective James Jim Kowalski, a 23-year veteran, was assigned the case at 6:45 p.m. on June 12th. His first call was to expand the search perimeter to 5 miles, mobilizing 89 officers and 200 civilian volunteers. But without GPS or reliable cell communication, coordination was chaos. Search teams duplicated areas while leaving others unchecked. The first false lead came June 13, 1995, at 9:34 a.m. Roger Williams, a Shell gas station employee, swore he'd seen Christopher with a man in a red Ford F-150. He provided a detailed description: white male, 45-50 years old, gray beard, eagle tattoo on right forearm. 17 units chased this lead for 72 hours, interrogating 43 red F-150 owners in the county. All had solid alibis. Williams later admitted he'd been drinking the night before and confused Christopher with another child. The second false lead was devastating. On June 15, 1995, at 3:22 p.m., Timothy Mason, Willow Creek Elementary's janitor, was arrested after one of Christopher's baseball cards, Ken Griffey Jr., Upper Deck 1989, was found in his locker. Mason, 31, with a 1987 marijuana possession charge, became the prime suspect. During 18 hours of interrogation without a lawyer present, still legal in Michigan then, Mason maintained his innocence. He explained Christopher had given him the card a week earlier after Mason helped retrieve his basketball from the roof. 3 students confirmed this story on June 17th. Mason was released, but the damage to his reputation was permanent. He moved to Ohio 2 months later. The third false lead nearly destroyed the Brennan family. On June 20, 1995, an anonymous tip at 11:47 p.m. suggested investigating Michael Brennan. The caller, never identified, claimed to have seen him acting strange near Lake Huron the day after the disappearance. Police, desperate for results, subjected Michael to 2 polygraph tests on June 22 and 24. Results were inconclusive due to his extreme emotional state. For a week, resources were diverted to investigate the devastated father, reviewing his finances, interviewing co-workers, even partially excavating the Brennans' backyard on June 27th. The investigation's most critical error occurred June 14th, when Harold Finch's testimony about the blue van was initially dismissed. Rookie officer Peter Reynolds, who took the statement, incorrectly wrote Oak and 3rd as Oak and 33rd, a non-existent intersection. This typo sent the search 7 miles west for 5 crucial days. When corrected on June 19th, any physical evidence at the correct location had been contaminated or removed. 1995 technology presented insurmountable obstacles. The only security cameras within 2 miles of the school were analog systems at 3 banks and a liquor store, all recorded on 6-hour VHS tapes that were rewound and reused every 48 hours. By the time police requisitioned them on June 14th, recordings from June 12th had been overwritten. The school's phone system had no caller ID. Highway toll records were maintained manually and filed weekly. When investigators requested them, many had been destroyed per standard protocol. The lack of accessible forensic DNA made everything worse. In 1995, DNA tests cost $4,000 per sample and took 6 to 8 weeks. Lansing's department had an annual budget of just $12,000 for all forensic testing. The few fibers found on Christopher's yo-yo were sent to the state lab on June 30th. Results arrived August 22nd, showing only synthetic fibers consistent with common automotive upholstery. No investigative value. Suspects ruled out included 3 registered sex offenders in the area. Martin Hayes, released from Jackson State Prison 6 months earlier, was at an AA meeting with 12 witnesses. Frank Morrison worked at a Detroit factory, 90 miles away, with confirmed time card records. Leonard Parks had been hospitalized since June 10th for appendicitis. By September 30th, 1995, after 3,147 man-hours of investigation, 200 interviews, and $380,000 in resources, the case went cold. Detective Kowalski wrote in his year-end report, "No viable new leads. Case remains active but without dedicated resource allocation." It was the beginning of 25 years of silence. The statistics were grim. In 1995, of the 2,100 children reported missing in Michigan, only 67% were found within the first year. After 5 years, that number dropped to 3%. Christopher Brennan had become part of the 30% who simply vanished. From 1996 to 2019, Christopher Brennan's absence became a wound that never healed, a void that grew deeper with each passing year. The Brennan family's rituals became ceremonies of grief and desperate hope. Every June 12th, without fail, Sarah and Michael placed 12 white candles in Christopher's bedroom window at 2:47 p.m., the exact time of his disappearance. Neighbors learned to respect this moment, turning off lawnmowers and music, creating a community silence that lasted exactly 9 minutes and 4 seconds, his age when he vanished. The first false sighting came March 8, 2003. A woman named Patricia Hendricks swore she'd seen Christopher, now 17 by her calculation, working at a McDonald's in Columbus, Ohio. He had the birthmark on his left cheek, she insisted. The Brennans drove 247 miles that same night, arriving at the restaurant at 2:30 a.m. They waited in the parking lot until it opened at 5 a.m. The young man Patricia had seen was Jose Martinez, a 19-year-old Guatemalan immigrant. The mark on his cheek was a cooking oil burn. Sarah cried the entire drive home. The second sighting, September 15, 2009, was crueler. A TV show about cold cases aired Christopher's age-progressed photo, generated by new FBI software. Within 48 hours, 73 calls came in. One seemed promising. A man in Portland, Oregon, calling himself Chris Brown, with no memory of his childhood before age 10. The FBI flew the Brennans to Portland on September 17th. DNA tests took 72 agonizing hours. Negative. Chris Brown was actually Christopher Patterson, an abandoned child from Kentucky. The disappointment hospitalized Sarah with what doctors called stress cardiomyopathy, literally a broken heart. The third significant sighting occurred April 23, 2014. Private investigator Thomas Murphy, hired by the Brennans with their retirement savings, $47,000, believed he'd found Christopher living as Daniel Thompson in Phoenix, Arizona. This man, 28 according to records, had appeared in the system in 1996 with no prior history. For 3 months, Murphy surveilled him, documenting 1,400 photographs. The resemblance was uncanny, but when they finally approached him on August 2, 2014, Daniel Thompson turned out to be a childhood abuse survivor from Florida who'd run away at 11. Another dead end. Michael Brennan's deterioration was gradual but relentless. In 1998, he started drinking. By 2001, he'd lost his job at General Motors after 18 years. In 2004, arrested for DUI. Sarah found him November 7, 2007, in the garage with the engine running, unconscious but alive. His note simply read, "Can't face another empty birthday." He survived but was never the same. Sarah's mother, Martha Wilson, died February 3, 2011, not knowing what happened to her grandson. Her last coherent words were, "Tell Christopher Grandma's waiting." Her death marked a turning point. Michael and Sarah, united only by shared grief, divorced August 15, 2012. Michael moved to a one-bedroom apartment in Detroit. Sarah stayed in the Maple Street house, unable to leave the last place she'd seen her son. The case was officially marked inactive on June 12, 2005, exactly 10 years after the disappearance. Detective Kowalski, now retired, kept a copy of the file in his basement, Every anniversary, he'd review it, searching for something overlooked. In 2015, he digitized the entire file himself, 3,400 pages of reports, interviews, and dead leads. In 2017, Sarah created a Facebook page, Finding Christopher Brennan. It accumulated 45,000 followers. Every post generated new theories, new false leads. Hope became a form of torture. A psychic in California claimed Christopher was alive with amnesia. Internet sleuths incorrectly accused a retired Vermont teacher of being the kidnapper. The man sued and won, costing Sarah $15,000 she didn't have. By 2019, Sarah, now 67, had developed early-onset Alzheimer's. Doctors attributed it to chronic stress. Some days she forgot Christopher had disappeared and waited for him at dinner. Other days, she relived the loss as if brand new. Michael, sober since 2016, visited every Sunday, united again by tragedy and now by illness. On December 31, 2019, as the world celebrated a new decade, Sarah wrote in her journal with a trembling hand, 25 years next year. Where are you, my baby? She didn't know the answer was just 526 miles away, living as Daniel Torres, working as a data analyst for Henderson Technologies, about to join a video call that would change everything. The odds of what happened next? Roughly 1 in 10 million according to FBI statistics. Marcus Henderson, founder and CEO of Henderson Technologies, a Cincinnati-based enterprise software company, wasn't a man given to hunches or superstition. MIT graduate with a master's in computer science, he'd built his company from scratch to a $230 million valuation. On April 14, 2020, at 9:45 a.m., he was brewing his third cup of Blue Mountain coffee in his home study, adjusting to the new reality of remote work imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting was scheduled for 10 short a.m. Eastern. Zoom meeting ID 782-4519-6023, password Q2 Review 2020. A routine quarterly review with his West Coast data analysis team. Daniel Torres, employed for 3 years, was known for his meticulous attention to detail and strange reluctance to attend company social events. An introverted genius, the HR director had called him. At 9:58 a.m., Marcus opened Zoom, checked his Logitech C920 camera and Blue Yeti microphone. Natural window light perfectly illuminated his face, a detail that would prove crucial. At exactly 10:12 a.m., participants began joining. Jennifer Walsh from San Francisco, Robert Chen from Seattle, Maria Rodriguez from Los Angeles, and Daniel Torres from San Diego. The meeting started with standard updates on performance metrics and Q3 projections. Daniel was presenting an analysis of customer usage patterns during early lockdown days. At 10:17 a.m., while screen sharing an Excel chart, he leaned toward the camera to point out a specific data point. His window light perfectly illuminated the left side of his face. Marcus felt time stop. There it was, a crescent-shaped birthmark on the left cheek, partially hidden by 3-day stubble. But it wasn't just that. When Daniel raised his hand to scratch his forehead, Marcus saw the scar above his right eyebrow. A distinctive, curved scar about an inch long, exactly like the one he'd seen 1,000 times on missing posters throughout Michigan in the mid-90s. Marcus Henderson grew up in Lansing, Michigan. In 1995, he was 15 and lived 6 blocks from the Brennans. He'd participated in the initial searches for Christopher. His mother, Eleanor Henderson, was the neighbor Sarah Brennan visited first when Christopher didn't come home. For years, Christopher's faded poster remained on the local supermarket bulletin board, where Marcus worked weekends bagging groceries. "Marcus? Can you hear me?" Daniel's voice snapped him back. Marcus had been staring, mute, for 23 seconds according to Zoom's log. Yeah, sorry. Connection issue," he lied. His mind raced at processor speed, could it be? The age matched. Daniel claimed to be 34, which would mean born in 1986, but Christopher would have turned 35 in March 2020. During the next 43 minutes, Marcus discreetly took 17 screenshots using his MacBook Pro's native function. Every time Daniel moved, Marcus captured a new angle. When Daniel stood to get water, Marcus recorded 8 seconds of video showing his walk, that slight roll he'd noticed before but never placed. At 11:03 a.m., when the meeting ended, Marcus remained in his study. paralyzed. He opened Google and searched Christopher Brennan missing 1995. The first result was Sarah Brennan's Facebook page. The age progression photo, updated in 2019, showed how Christopher would look at 34. Marcus compared the image to his screenshots, toggling between windows with Command plus Tab. The resemblance was undeniable, but not conclusive. The ethical dilemma tortured him. If wrong, he could destroy an innocent employee's life and reopen devastating wounds for the Brennan family. If right, there were endless questions. Did Daniel know who he really was? Victim or accomplice? How had he obtained a completely new identity? At 2:15 p.m., after 3 hours of internal debate, Marcus made a decision. He called his old MIT roommate, now working at the FBI's Cyber Crimes Division. "Kevin, I need your help with something. Off the record for now. I think I just found a kid who's been missing for 25 years. This raises serious privacy concerns about facial recognition technology in the workplace. But sometimes, technology serves a greater purpose." The 21st century investigation into Daniel Torres's true identity began unofficially April 15, 2020, at 8 a.m., when Special Agent Kevin Park discreetly accessed the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, from his secure FBI laptop in Quantico, Virginia. What would have taken weeks of paperwork and interagency coordination in 1995 now took 7 seconds of database query. First step, facial recognition software. Park used the FBI's next-generation identification, NGI system, specifically the Interstate Face Search algorithm, version 4.2. Marcus's 17 screenshots, enhanced via ESRGAN AI upscaling from 720p to 4K, were compared against a database of 640 million images. The process that would have been science fiction in 1995 returned results in 47 seconds, 94.3% probability match to Christopher Michael Brennan, case WEM-I 1995-06547. But modern technology demanded multiple verification. Park ran the images through 3 additional systems: Amazon Recognition, 92.8% match, Microsoft Azure Face API, 93.1% match, and the FBI's proprietary FaceNet, 95.7% match. The convergence was statistically significant, error probability less than 0.001%. The odds of this being coincidence were astronomical. EXIF metadata analysis of Daniel Torres's employee files at Henderson Technologies revealed immediate inconsistencies. His corporate ID photo, supposedly taken in 2017, contained metadata indicating creation in Photoshop CS6 on March 3, 2017, at 3:47 p.m., with 14 editing layers. Forensic image analysis using error level analysis algorithm showed significant manipulation around the left ear area, possibly hiding distinctive features. Database searches revealed Daniel Torres first appeared in official records September 7, 1996, when enrolled at Jefferson Middle School in Phoenix, Arizona, supposedly as a transfer student from Mexico. However, no entry records existed, no student visa, no Mexican birth certificate. Social Security number 5236789 was issued in Arizona, October 1996, highly unusual for someone supposedly born in 1986. On April 17th, Park obtained a DNA sample covertly. During a COVID security update mandated by Henderson Technologies, all remote employees received at-home health kits. Daniels was intercepted post-use and diverted to the FBI DNA lab at Quantico. Simultaneously, Sarah Brennan, now in a memory care facility in Lansing, provided a saliva sample through her legal guardian, unaware of its purpose. DNA analysis using the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, with 24 loci STR markers took just 18 hours, a process that would have taken 2 months in 1995. April 19 at 4:23 p.m. Results confirmed. Maternal filial relationship probability 9.99999%. Daniel Torres was Christopher Brennan. Digital financial investigation revealed layers of deception. Daniel's bank accounts showed consistent monthly deposits of $3,000 from a Delaware LLC called Sunset Holdings from 1996 to 2018. Sunset Holdings traced through the FinCEN database, linked to 7 other shell companies, all created between 1995-1996, all with the same registered agent, attorney Jonathan Marsh, who conveniently died in a boating accident in 2001. Blockchain analysis, non-existent in 1995, revealed Daniel had been receiving Bitcoin payments since 2013, totaling 47.3 BTC, April 2020 value, $342,000, from a wallet linked to dark web markets. Not directly criminal, but suggesting knowledge of his situation and possible blackmail or hush payments. Historical geolocation through aggregated Google Maps data, cell towers, and credit card records created a 24-year movement map of Daniel. Notably, he'd never traveled within 500 miles of Lansing, Michigan. He avoided airports with advanced facial recognition. His travel patterns showed deliberate avoidance of jurisdictions with strong missing persons programs. Variant Systems X3 forensic linguistic analysis software analyzed 10,000 of Daniel's emails since 2008. It detected inconsistencies in his supposed background. He used Midwest idioms, pop instead of soda, cultural references inconsistent with someone raised in Mexico, and inexplicable knowledge of Michigan geography, mentioned meeting up at the Mackinac Bridge in a 2014 email, an extremely specific reference. April 22nd, the investigation took a dark turn. Facial recognition identified another person in Daniel's Zoom background from an April 7th meeting. Richard Vaughn, 63, retired elementary teacher living in San Diego. Records showed Vaughn had worked as a substitute janitor at Willow Creek Elementary from June 1st to 15, 1995, covering for Timothy Mason, who was on vacation. This detail was overlooked in the original investigation because Vaughn wasn't an official employee, just a cash-paid contractor. The electronic surveillance warrant, approved by federal judge Margaret Chen on April 23rd, under Patriot Act Section 215, allowed real-time monitoring of all digital communications for Daniel and Vaughn. Within 72 hours, they intercepted 43 encrypted messages via Signal discussing the Michigan problem and keeping the story straight. The case didn't end the day he disappeared, but when technology finally caught up to 25 years of lies. Here's where modern tech makes all the difference. What took months in 1995 now took days. On April 28, 2020, at 5:47 a.m., 18 FBI agents simultaneously surrounded 2 residences, Daniel Torres's apartment at 4823 Pacific Boulevard, San Diego, and Richard Vaughn's house at 776 Sunset Drive, just 2 miles away. The operation, codenamed Operation Reunion, was executed with surgical precision. No sirens, no TV drama, just professionals finishing a job that had waited 25 years. Daniel Torres, now confirmed as Christopher Brennan, was arrested while sleeping. He didn't resist. When Agent Park read him his Miranda rights, Daniel responded with one word: finally. On his nightstand, agents found a journal with 1,347 pages, written over 24 years, beginning with an entry from September 7, 1996. My name is not Daniel. I am 10 years old. I miss my mum. Richard Vaughn attempted to destroy evidence. Agents found him feeding documents into an industrial shredder. They recovered 16 boxes of partially destroyed materials using forensic reconstruction techniques. Among the documents, fake birth certificates, fabricated school records, and most disturbingly, photographs of 6 other children annotated as candidates, dated between 1993 and 1995. Vaughn's interrogation, conducted by Special Agent Patricia Williams, ironically sharing the name of Christopher's 4th-grade teacher, began at 9:20 a.m. at the FBI's San Diego office. Vaughn, advised by Public Defender Thomas Mitchell, initially denied all knowledge, but when presented with decoded signal messages and photographs found in his home, his facade crumbled. It wasn't supposed to go like this, Vaughn began at 11:43 a.m., according to the official transcript. Christopher was special, brilliant, wasted on that working-class family. I could give him more. The confession, recorded in 4K video with redundant audio backup, lasted 7 hours and 23 minutes. Vaughn described the kidnapping method in chilling detail. During his 2 weeks as substitute janitor, he'd studied the children, identifying those with potential and vulnerabilities. Christopher caught his attention for his intelligence and habit of walking alone after school. Vaughn gained his trust gradually, first helping with math homework, then giving him baseball cards that were extras from his collection. On June 12, 1995, Vaughn waited in his blue Chevrolet Astro van. Plate MI47X226, the partial plate Margaret Cooper had seen. He offered Christopher a ride to a special baseball card shop that had a Mickey Mantle rookie card. "Kids always trust when there's something specific they want," Vaughn explained with disturbing calm. It wasn't a violent abduction. He got in voluntarily. The original plan, according to Vaughn, was to raise Christopher properly. Vaughn, single and childless, saw himself as a superior father. He'd prepared for months, fake documents through his connection with Jonathan Marsh, a corrupt lawyer specializing in illegal adoptions, a rented house in Phoenix under the name Thomas Anderson. He'd even enrolled Daniel in local baseball leagues to maintain normalcy. But Christopher wasn't the docile child Vaughn expected. He cried for weeks, Vaughn admitted. He tried to escape 17 times in the first 3 months. "I had to discipline him." The discipline, according to later medical evidence, included food deprivation, confinement in a soundproofed basement, and what Vaughn called re-education, hours of indoctrination about his new life and the lies of his previous family. The breaking point came December 24, 1995. Christopher, then 10, tried to call home from a mall payphone. Vaughn caught him after Christopher only managed to say "Mom" before the line was cut. Sarah Brennan had received that call. For 25 years, she'd wondered if it was real or desperate imagination. After that, he gave up, Vaughn said. He accepted being Daniel. It was easier than fighting. The falsified school records showed Daniel Torres as a model student but withdrawn. Teachers noted his brilliance but also his strange sadness. A 1998 school counselor wrote, "Daniel seems to carry an invisible weight. He refuses to discuss life before age 10. The connection to other cases was the most disturbing aspect. The photographs of the 6 other children matched unsolved cases. Tommy Mitchell, vanished Oakland, 1993. Rebecca Anderson, vanished Portland, 1994. Jose Ramirez, vanished Los Angeles, 1994. Amy Chen, vanished Seattle, 1995. Michael Johnson, vanished Sacramento, 1995. And Sarah Williams, vanished San Francisco, 1995. Vaughn denied kidnapping these children, but admitted being part of a network. "We weren't pedophiles," he insisted, as if that made it better. "We were collectors, saviors. These kids had wasted potential." He provided 3 more names: Dr. Martin Hayes, retired pediatrician in Oregon, Barbara Sullivan, former social worker in Nevada, and James Morrison, tech entrepreneur in Washington. All were arrested within 48 hours. Daniel Chacha Christopher's testimony on April 30th was heartbreaking. With emergency therapy and anti-anxiety medication, he could articulate 24 years of psychological captivity. "I knew who I was," he said, looking directly at the camera. "I never forgot. But after years of being told your family doesn't want you, that they didn't search hard enough, that you were a mistake in their lives, you start believing maybe Daniel is better than Christopher." Vaughn had been clever. He allowed Daniel to attend college, San Diego State Computer Science, graduated 2008, get a job, have a seemingly normal life, but always under surveillance. The monthly $3,000 payments weren't support, they were bribes. The Bitcoin was hush money. Vaughn had compromising videos of early discipline, threatening to send them to employers if Daniel ever talked. "The pandemic changed everything," Daniel explained. "When everyone started working from home, Vaughn lost his daily control over me. For the first time in 24 years, I was truly alone. I started writing more in my journal. I started remembering more. I started hoping." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A virus that separated the world had reunited a family. Remote work would never be the same for Marcus Henderson, who'd unknowingly solved one of Michigan's oldest missing persons cases. May 2, 2020, the network's remains were exposed. 14 arrests in 6 states, 23 potentially identified missing children, 4 found alive living under false identities. The network had operated from 1991 to 1997, when Jonathan Marsh's death forced suspension. Vaughn had kept Christopher as his achievement, his perfect created son. The truth was more shocking than any internet conspiracy theory. Not sex trafficking, not ritual murder, not organ harvesting. Something arguably worse. Complete identity theft, murdering a child's soul while the body lived on. But here's what the algorithms and AI couldn't predict: the human capacity for survival. On November 15, 2021, after 18 months of legal proceedings, Richard Vaughn was sentenced in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of California. Judge Roberto Guzman read the charges: 1 count of federal kidnapping, 18 U.S.C. Farsfima 2001. 1 count of transporting a minor across state lines with criminal intent, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 2423. 6 counts of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 371. 3 counts of aggravated identity fraud, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 1028A, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 1956. The sentence: 327 years without possibility of parole, effectively multiple life sentences. The confrontation between Sarah Brennan and Vaughn in the courtroom on sentencing day lasted 3 minutes and 17 seconds. Sarah, now 69, in a wheelchair due to advanced Parkinson's accelerated by decades of stress, spoke clearly. "You stole my baby. You stole 25 years. You stole a life. But you didn't steal his spirit. My Christopher survived. You're the one who's dead inside." Vaughn, handcuffed in orange prisoner uniform, tried to respond but was silenced by his own attorney. His last recorded words in court were, "I just wanted to be a father." The gallery erupted in disgusted murmurs. Michael Brennan, sober for 5 years, stood beside his ex-wife. He didn't speak in court, but his victim impact statement, read by the prosecutor, contained a line that resonated. "Every day for 9,131 days, I died a little. Now, knowing he's alive, I have to learn to live again." On December 20th, 2021, the Brennan family held a symbolic funeral for the Christopher who never returned. Not a funeral for the adult Daniel who was alive and in intensive therapy, but for the 9-year-old boy who effectively died June 12, 1995. 300 people attended, including 47 of the original 1995 search volunteers. The small white casket contained Christopher's Power Rangers backpack, his baseball cards, and a photo of him smiling on his 9th birthday. Daniel Torres legally changed his name back to Christopher Michael Brennan on January 1, 2022, but chose to continue using Daniel professionally. "Christopher was a child," he explained in his only public interview with CNN. "I'm an adult formed by 2 identities. I can't just erase 25 years, even if I wanted to. Family reunification has been complicated. Christopher Daniel visits Sarah weekly at her care facility, but she often doesn't recognize him, trapped in memory loops where he's still 9. Michael and Christopher have developed a cautious relationship, bonded by shared pain, but separated by a quarter-century of lost experiences. Case status closed. All conspirators convicted. 4 missing children recovered alive." The case didn't end the day he disappeared, but when finally, after 25 years of devastating silence, technology and chance converged on a Zoom screen, proving that sometimes, very rarely, ghosts do come home. What happened to Christopher Brennan raises serious questions about digital privacy, workplace surveillance, and the unintended consequences of pandemic technology. But sometimes, just sometimes, Big Brother watching turns out to be exactly what we need.